Well, it's Friday evening. The
That's the age, man. Yeah. What month is this? I kind of know it's Friday, but beyond that, I have no idea. And the year? Who's the president, Brent? Never mind. Don't go there.
Well, I should have known because my birthday was just the other day.
Yep,
So
I know.
50 years old, people, still looking good.
Yeah, 50. Yeah. Same here.
Yes, we're, Dr. Gregory Little here, another episode of From Psychology to Indian Mounds.
And to UFOs.
And to UFOs and whole spectrum of anomalies that, are of great interest to us. And, we've known each other since 1985, and it's, we're just fascinated by, and now you've got this book just came out. Oh shoot, it's going backwards here on us. But anyway,
no, it looks just fine. It's backwards to you now. By the way, let me say this: that book, the audio version of it on all the whatever formats there, that was available this week. The Kindle version is available Tuesday of this coming week, which I believe is the whatever, I don't know. And then May 10th. May 10th is when the paperback book is out because of it's really supply side issues. They have to get books to all the bookstores and to all the distributors, of which there's a bunch. And they got to also get them to England and to Australia, New Zealand, and all that. And so they're not going to be available in those other countries until July. That's how long it's going to take for books to get from the U.S. to the U.K. and those other places. So, but the audio is out. I actually bought a copy of the audio, and I was very impressed by it. Actually, it was the narration. The narration was done by Micah Hanks, who did just a great job. Really, really good job.
Okay, well, that's great. There's a lot of information that you and Andrew have packed in this book. You've got the first section, and Andrew's got the last half of the book, and covering a number of things that I try to stay up with, all the high strange things out there, but you guys have brought some things up I wasn't aware of. And you went into a lot of historical information that a lot of people aren't familiar with, covering Joan of Arc, and Swedenborg.
Yeah, we've actually been to his gravesite, which actually in the grave, it's a crypt that's in a huge cathedral in Uppsala, Sweden. Very interesting place, but they got a big thing there. I mean, Swedenborg was a really big deal. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Well, anyway, I mean, and of course the shamans I know in the section that Andrew wrote, there was a site over in Israel that dates so far back, and the things that he has uncovered there, and then this another place over in Europe where I can't remember where it was, but a phenomenal phenomena of a Marian apparition out floating in the water or something that was seen for years and years, and of course those Marian apparitions are quite fascinating. You've written about quite extensively on Saigon, Egypt, and that's also in your section, and the photographs and extraordinary events. Thousands and thousands of people witnessed that as Fatima, Portugal, back in 1917, the Dance of the Sun, and the parallels with a modern UFO phenomena. It's pretty mind-boggling, really. So. Anyway, and there's so much to cover. We're not going to be able to cover it all in this segment.
No, I realize that. There's a lot in there, and I want to thank you. You actually reviewed that before it was printed. I know you reviewed the what are called galley proofs and wrote a blurb on it. Thank you very much for that. I know that you didn't read it all carefully, but you skimmed through it, which is what everybody does in galley proofs. But I know you picked up a lot of stuff because we've talked about it many, many times. But the details are just, I mean, I'm overwhelmed with the details. And Andrew, like you brought up that cave in Israel, it's called Kesem, spelled Kesem. Well, it's pronounced Kesem, spelled Quesem. And it is a cave where the Israeli archaeologists believe that it was occupied by a shaman or a shamanistic group 400,000 years ago, which is astonishing. And so Andrew titled that little section "The First Shaman" because that is the first shaman that we know of. There was a lot going on at that particular cave. It's near Tel Aviv, and Andrew actually went there and visited. He went to the university and met with the archaeologists at the university in Israel. And then they actually took Andrew out on a four-wheeler where the car broke down once. And they had a flat tire and had to get somebody to come and change it because it's in a very rugged place. But he got to go down into the cave, look at all of it in the labs at the university, the laboratories. He was able to see and touch and evaluate virtually all the hundreds of artifacts that they had pulled out of that cave. And so I tried in the first half of the book to lead up to that about all the shamanistic stuff in the Americas that we know of and their beliefs, and take it back to probably Siberia through a number of ways. You can trace what went on in North America's shamanistic traditions back to Siberia, at least 12,000 years ago, probably more than that, but they're certain that goes back at least 12,000 years. So I tried to lead that up and say that, okay, people have been seeking the source of weird stuff, weird phenomena, and people have been doing everything they can through rituals to try to connect to whatever that other force or whatever that other reality is, the paranormal reality. And so I believe I ended my half with, it's a lot older than anyone thinks. And it is 400,000 years. And I suspect eventually they'll find things that go back even further than that. So that the rest of Andrew's stuff, it is, I mean, Andrew Collins is a writing machine. Andrew absorbs information and he remembers it, and in his brain, he collates it, puts it together. Sometimes he'll put it off to the side like in a mental filing cabinet. But then he'll sit down and it just comes out. He does the same thing when he gives lectures and talks and facts and figures and dates and numbers and people's names and all that. He just spits it all out and remembers it all. I, on the other hand, am not quite that good. I'm pretty fair with it sometimes, but not like Andrew. That man is a machine.
Well, I know that I'm wondering with that. Bussum, how we pronounce it, cave, if that site being so old, I know you guys have looked at a lot of the genetics, and I may have missed it. I skimmed, but it sounded absolutely fascinating. Was there anything genetic that's been found? Whether we
no, there's nothing genetic per se. They do have a link to the Denisovans, which is one of the things that Andrew got real interested in about, are these Denisovans or not? And of course, that was our prior book, Denisovan Origins. Andrew is of the opinion that some Denisovan influence was there. But, we don't know. Who knows? And genetics, no. I don't believe they've tested any bone that they pulled out. They found a swan's wing, the bone of a swan. And as they dug down, they found more and more of these. And swans appear to be, particularly their wings, appear to be one of the main ritualistic items, sacred items that they used. But no, there's nothing genetic like the haplogroups that I could talk about with that. And I don't think, I'm sure in the first half of the book, I don't think I mentioned genetics one time, except to say that we do know that some people came across the Bering Straits or Beringia back at the end of the last ice age when it opened up. As we've said many times, there were people already here, but we know for sure that some people came over for Beringia. That's for certain. And even archaeologists say there were people already here now. But what they hedge it by saying, there probably weren't very many people, and the incoming people were more advanced and kind of wiped them out, or they just blended in with the newcomers and simply became them. But anyway, the book is about about seeking the source of the paranormal, seeking the source of UFOs, seeking the source of the Marian apparitions, trying to figure out contactees at abductions. And one of the things I believe is on the first page, I said, it would be interesting to know what causes lots of people, probably hundreds to many, many thousands of people who will claim that a flying saucer lands and some being walks out, which might be a tall Nordic woman, might be a Nordic guy with, long blonde hair, a real statuesque figure, or it could be like an alien of some kind. And then they might hand them a pancake, as you well know in one story, or they might say, greetings, Earthling, I'm from the planet Clarion, or we live on Saturn, or, oh yeah, we're on the moon, or Mars, or Venus, or anywhere else. And the people, a lot of those people that are contactees are telling a story as they perceived it. That's what they perceived to happen. Not all the contactees, there's no doubt some of them made their stories up for notoriety, for money, whatever. We know some of them did, but not all of them. So clearly there's something going on there. But the point that I've made about that is that virtually in all those cases, whatever the beings were that stepped out of those saucers lied. And that's why I say they're tricksters, which brings in John Keel and you. You are very heavily referenced and quoted in that book. And a lot of what you wrote in your, I wanted to say autobiography of John Keel, but that would not be correct. A kind of a biography of John Keel. We used a lot, or I used a lot of that material that you gathered and some of Brad Steiger's and others.
Well, yeah, the trickster element. I mean, it's like you've pointed out, the shamans even recognized, so many times the fact that they had to kind of cooperate with it, and try to maintain a balance, and from their observations, which who knows went for how long, and how long it took them to process this, and a lot of the people today going through these experiences are just taking them at face value, thinking that whatever they're told is the literal truth. And so the only way that the trickster can really be a teacher is to go into it with, recognition of that it's going to test you, and kind of, the way it teaches you is to learn to see through its deceptions, right? It's
right.
Well,
a really good case of that is who I call the first contactee, and that's Emanuel Swedenborg. And in the mid 1600s, Swedenborg was in London. He was an official of the Swedish government. He was also a scientist. He was very respected. He was very well known. He was famous. But he was in he took a trip to London from Sweden, and he generally tried to avoid people, except for women. Now, there's a whole story with that, but I won't get into that. Anyway, Swedenborg was in this tavern, and they put him on the side in a side room, and he was in there alone to eat. And he sat there, and they served him the food. The server left, and he sat there a while, and he was eating a little. And then suddenly, it was a small room. Right on the other side of the room, a figure just appeared, materialized in a chair. And Swedenborg's writings say the guy looked just like a regular human being, and the guy looked at him and smiled and said, "Don't eat too much." That was it. Well, it terrified Swedenborg. He immediately dropped everything and he ran back to his motel room. There's a lot of details in this story. It was written, Swedenborg wrote about it in a bunch of books. He also put it in his private journal, which is available. You can get, well, I don't know if you can buy copies of it, but it is available and you can find it online. And either that night or the next night in his hotel room, this man materialized again. Swedenborg was in his bed, about to go to sleep. The room suddenly filled full of light, and here this man appeared in glowing light. And the man told him that he was going to have his mind opened, and he did. So for the next 20 some years, Swedenborg was visited by beings which told him they were from other planets in the solar system. They took Swedenborg on rides into the solar system, and he made it to Saturn. Swedenborg visited the moon. He visited, he went to Mars. He went to all the planets, including Saturn. That's where he stopped. And he said there were beings on all of them. He described the beings. He talked about the clothing they wore. And again, this went over 28 years. And over time, he began to suspect and believe that something else is going on, that these are spiritual beings. But now, keep this in mind, Swedenborg touched them. He would shake hands occasionally, and he said they were physically real. And he made a very specific statement. He said, in total clear mind, absolute clear mind, middle of the day, walking around with these beings, he said they are physically real and they look like us. He explained that they came to Earth probably through some sort of transportation method, like almost Star Trek-like, like a transporter. But he realized later that they were somehow spiritual beings. And the reason that I believe they're tricksters is pretty simple. They didn't come from Saturn. They didn't come from Mars. They didn't come from Venus or Jupiter or any other planet. We know those planets are not inhabited by beings. Maybe they were once, but science, I pretty much accept the fact that those planets don't have people like us and the cities like he described, like the cities everywhere. It's just like Earth. It's not, unless something very weird is happening and we can't trust any of the science at all. So it's a trickster. So you got to get back beyond it. You got to get by it somehow.
And he was really a very brilliant scientist at his time.
He was a scientist. He wrote about mineralogy, anatomy, physics, chemistry. He was the head of mining, and I can't remember all of his appointments in Sweden, but he was the head in government of almost everything scientific. And he was also a member of royalty.
Yeah, and that story, that whole scenario that he experienced way back then, the 16th century, it's been repeated thousands of times since, you know?
Yes, it sounds just like a contactee story.
Yeah, I mean, it could have happened back in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, or it could happen today, you know?
Yeah.
It's just an ongoing situation.
So I'll end that part by saying this. Skeptics will say, oh, it's nonsense. He lied, or he hallucinated, or he was mentally ill. All right. So he lied, he hallucinated, he was mentally ill. That's what skeptics will tell you, one of those. On the other hand, see, I don't believe that. I think there's something else happening. I don't believe all these people are lying. I think they are reporting exactly what happened to them, but they're never able to get beyond the trickster aspect. That's the point of this. So what's beyond the trickster aspect? Well, I go to Native American beliefs and all that, and there's something there. And encountering the trickster is something that will lead you to one of two paths. Most people will take the first path, whatever the trickster says or does or scares them or whatever. So they'll take that path. There's another path that you can take if you can avoid the first path, and through your own balance and harmonizing with whatever the spiritual force is, you can take a different path, and you have access to higher knowledge, maybe higher spiritual knowledge, maybe knowledge of manipulating the paranormal or whatever. But all that is essentially, it's what the book's about. Andrew explains it in the realm of physics and quantum mechanics, string theory, string theory, possibly another dimension or multidimensional. I called them time beings in the book, TIIME, which stands for, and this is the term I'm going to use from now on. It stands for transient intrusions of intelligent manifesting energy. So it's transient, meaning it's always temporary, never stays. You know, flying saucer just doesn't sit and land, and loads of people get around it, you know, and bang on it and all that. That doesn't happen. It's only there for a while. It is a intrusion because it suddenly intrudes into reality. It's intelligent because it interacts with us. And it's manifesting energy. I believe that it is a plasma-based energy, which may or may not be an interdimensional thing. I think it's everywhere around the earth, but there's some places where it intrudes a whole lot more, and it's a lot more powerful. Native Americans knew how to manipulate it by building earthworks, which earth is the most primordial form of spirit. They sometimes use rocks, which is condensed spirit. And they would use crystals, which is purified and condensed spiritual energy, the most pure type, and water, which is flowing spiritual energy. So they knew how to manipulate those things for rituals, and that's what they did. So that's kind of a summary of it. I know we're close to the end, so I'll let you ask any last question, and we'll maybe take another trip into this next time and go a little deeper. Did I answer what you wanted?
Yes. I mean, you know, a lot of times the experience isn't always exactly the same for everyone. And there's so many different characters, and there's people telling you in the field, we have determined there's 76 different groups of extraterrestrial beings visiting it, or there are 96, or there are 10, or whatever, you know, and when they tell you that, you know, they've gone down the rabbit hole.
Yes. Let me add something to that about all the numbers. Okay, so Andrew calls when they physically manifest, Andrew calls them N beings. And N is like the little N, and it means number. And it means it's probably infinite. They could manifest in any form that they need to take because they manifest in a way that is consistent with your cultural expectations, whatever's going on with you personally, and whatever's going on in the world at the time, because they're interacting with what's going on here on Earth. And so their manifestation form is somewhat tuned to the percipient, to the individual that interacts with it, or individuals.
Oh, yeah. And they can also, as you know, the shamans talked about, essentially, you can call it something else, but shapeshift, you know. And,
yeah.
People have seen that, and they can appear as one of us, or appear as Cyclops, or whatever.
Cyclops, one eye. Yes, or maybe Bigfoot. I've been asked if Bigfoot's related, and I've said maybe it's very possible that Bigfoot is. A lot of people think the Bigfoot phenomenon is a paranormal phenomenon. A lot of people do. I don't really know if it is or not. I've talked to people that have had the Bigfoot stuff, and I was kind of convinced they're telling me the absolute truth. They're telling me what they saw. And the only rational explanation, if you accept what they said, is there was some big guy who dressed up in a really, really good Bigfoot suit and was walking around. And reliable people that are professionals have told me about their experiences. In fact, some of them were up not too far from where you live. In central Tennessee, but I've never really written that up, and I don't think I mentioned Bigfoot in the book once. I don't think Andrew did either.
Yeah, it's something that gets reported. I've had some contactees here in Tennessee. One said that he was hunting, and a Bigfoot came out of this spherical craft that landed in the field where he was, and then went back into it. And then another one, he said he was on board a craft, and they had a Bigfoot, I think, that was kind of sedated.
Yeah. All right. A sedated Bigfoot. Well, that's good. A sedated Bigfoot is probably safer than a non-sedated Bigfoot.
But you know, hey, you have to entertain these questions. You know, there's so many people, and there's those, like you say, who seem very credible individuals telling incredible stories.
Yeah.
So anyway. Well, anyhow,
we'll take this up again, and we'll go into a little more depth in some of the areas. But that's kind of a summary, and basically, the beliefs that I've espoused here and some of the ones that I talked about, Andrew, that some of the things he's written. It's not going to make us a lot of friends in the UFO field at first, because we do say in the book that extraterrestrials certainly have been to Earth. Absolutely. But it's not what people think. It's not like constant visitations and all of the abductions and all the experiences. So it's not exactly what people think. So we're giving an alternative explanation here. And Erich von Daniken wrote a foreword to this book. He read the book, and Eric likes where it's going, and I appreciate that. Origins of the Gods. Go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Books A Million or Scrivener or any of them, and you'll be able to get that. And very good. So I guess we'll pick this up next time. And always a pleasure.
Same here. And all I can say is on to the next. Thank you.
On to the next. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you, Greg.
All right. Next time.